webinar. One is for those that are able to attend the rally in person. We will talk about how to make the most of your legislative visit and talk through the priorities that the GrandRally co-sponsors are highlighting or recommending that you highlight during your legislative visits. And the other is for those that aren't able to attend in person. We will talk through opportunities through the virtual GrandRally. And I'm going to turn the agenda over then to Adam.
Hi there, folks. So today we're going to be doing a brief overview of GrandRally events, which includes the schedule of the day and what to expect. We'll kind of cover what you can expect to happen in a legislative visit, and then what to say, which will include kind of an overview of the issue, how to tell your story, and the official policy priorities of the rally. Then we'll move on to the virtual GrandRally for those who aren't able to attend in person, which has 3 different components: a live stream, a call-in number, and social media. And then we will take questions, or we will answer questions. So let's start with the overview of events. So if you haven't already, and you are planning to come to DC, please register for the GrandRally at GrandRally2017.org. We are holding our second webinar now, so you can skip the webinar section. On Tuesday, May 9th, which is the day before the GrandRally, we'll be holding an advocacy training in the afternoon at 2. And then starting at 6, we'll hold a celebratory reception going into a dinner that ends at 9:30. And all these events are at the kind of the Hyatt Regency Hotel on Capitol Hill. And then the following day, in the early morning, we will be having an advocacy training at GU headquarters at 25 East Street Northwest. And then starting at noon, we'll begin pre-rally activities leading into the GrandRally on the U.S. Capitol. And then after that, we will send folks off to conduct the legislative visits. So for those going into their legislative visits.
Great. So if you haven't come to Washington, D.C. before, here's a little bit of basics of the lay of the land and what to expect in going into some legislative visits. So folks that are attending the rally, we will be on the west grassy front of the rally. So that means you're standing in between the U.S. Capitol, and then comes the mall, and then on the way on the other side of the mall is the Lincoln Memorial. So if you've seen that on television, you're in between those two, but you're on the grass right in front of the Capitol there. So if you're standing there looking at the Capitol, to your right you have 3 large House office buildings, and those are the offices of the House of Representatives. So while a lot of the legislative activity happens at the Capitol itself, all of the meetings and the committee meetings and a lot of the activity actually happens in those House office buildings and Senate office buildings. So the House office buildings are on the right. The Senate office buildings are on the left. There's 3 of those buildings. So when you schedule your visits, you will be going between the House and the Senate. And so in the materials about how to schedule your visits, we talk about how you need to allow yourself some time to get in between those 2 meetings, or those 2 spaces. But again, House on the right, Senate on the left. So you will head up to your meeting. There will be some marshals on the site of the rally that can help direct you to those buildings. And our goal is that if you are with a group that has not done this before, that we can actually provide a chaperone to large groups of state delegations that are unfamiliar with. So somebody, a seasoned advocate, can go with you to direct you and sort of help you feel comfortable in the meeting. So once you get to the proper building, you will need to go through security. Security is pretty similar to airport security in the House office buildings, so just think of it that way. The materials that we send in advance do point you to a list of things you need to be cautious not to bring in. And Then once you get through security, of course, you want to give yourself a little bit of time because it can be backed up, particularly in May. It's a pretty popular time for groups of folks to be doing visits. Then you will find the room of your meeting. You'll go into the meeting and someone in your group will introduce your group and say the name of the person that you're planning to meet with. Now, if you're meeting with a member on the House side, you will most likely be meeting with staff when you're here for the rally. Unfortunately, the House of Representatives changed their legislative calendar, so most of the representatives will be back in their districts during the rally. The Senate is expected to be in session, but that means that you will be meeting not with the representatives themselves, but with congressional staff. The good news about this is often in DC, when they are not in session, that means that the congressional staff are a little more relaxed and they might have more time and they can spend a lot of time with you. And the staff do have the ear of the members of Congress, so it's still a very important meeting even if you're not meeting with the member themselves. So you would name that, get the staff person's name, present it, and they would come out and tell you where you would meet. Now, in some cases, if it's a particularly busy time, it may be that there's not space, a typical room for you to go and meet with them, and that's okay. You may be meeting in the lobby of the member of Congress's office, or in some cases, people need to end up meeting in the hallway, or you might get a lovely room and you might even meet in the office of the member of Congress, particularly if they're not around. But wherever the space is, these are all very common approaches to meeting with you, so just make an adjustment and prepare your marks and go forward. And we will talk through specifically what to say in a moment. So we did talk about who you would meet with. On the House side, it will probably be congressional staff. On the Senate side, it's possible you would briefly meet with a senator if they're around and able to meet with you. In that case, typically, if you're meeting with a senator, it may be just a few minutes, an opportunity for a picture. You may have 30 seconds to a minute to convey the importance of the issue that you want to share, and then often that member needs to move on, and then you have more time to actually talk with staff. In a few cases, if there is a lot of activity and staff get called away, they may send you to a lower level staff person, in rare cases an intern or a staff assistant that sits at the front desk. But regardless of who you are meeting with, there are really clear procedures and offices that the issues that you raise need to be conveyed and recorded in some way, so know that you are conveying your point and it is being recorded with the member in some form. So the next question is, when will these visits take place? Well, in most cases, you all are scheduling the visits, so you have that information. We are recommending that if at all possible, folks try to schedule visits after the Grand Rally. The Grand Rally is scheduled to end at 2:30, so anytime between 3 and 5 in the afternoon would be ideal. Now, it may be that you're unable to get meetings at that time, and in that case, if you're coming earlier or the day before, of course you're welcome to schedule visits another time when you're here. We do hope that you don't schedule them during the Grand Rally so you can participate in those activities. But it's a very important part of your time in Washington to make sure that your voice is heard individually with your member of Congress. So if you're able to do that and make it a priority, that is a really important thing to do. And then finally, after you have had the meetings, or if you're in between meetings, we will be scouting out some space in the cafeterias on both the House and the Senate side. So there will be more specifics about how to get there in your materials when you come to the rally. But if you would like to debrief with us, you can anytime between 3 and 5 that afternoon after the rally. Come and just say how it went. This was great. This cool thing happened. Or I have a question about this. There will be staff available with some water and snacks in the cafeteria. So we would love to hear from you in that way. And even if you aren't able to do that in person, we will have debrief forms. We would really like to hear how your meeting went, to keep track of it and get a sense of responses that we've heard from members of Congress. So we will ask you to complete those forms and send them back to us either by snail mail, electronic, or fax. So more on that in your field visit packet. So next, what will we be talking about? So when I think about doing legislative visits, I think sort of a shorthand, easy way to think about it is there's three major points to an effective legislative visit. And I think of it in terms of head, heart, and hands. That's head, heart, and hands. So the first part is head. That's the sort of intellectual part, the thinking part, where you're putting forth just sort of a quick overview of the issue, maybe a statistic that brings sort of a frame to the issue. That's the head piece. So quick issue overview. You would be saying something like, more than 2.6 million children are being raised by grandparents or other relatives in the United States today. When children can't remain with their parents, they do best with grandparents or other relatives. And when you compare children placed with non-relatives to children in kinship care, those in kinship care or grand families have more stability, better health care outcomes, better mental health, stronger sense of identity, belonging, and stay more connected to brothers and sisters. So that's just a few facts that you can start with, so you have some framing today. And of course, perhaps right when you start, you would say, of course, we're here because there's a national grand rally in Washington taking place, and we're elevating the visibility of these families, and then launch into those specific statistics and points. So after that comes the heart piece, and that is where you will want, if you're in a group, it may be one or two of you. If it's just you, it would be you sharing your story, but you want someone to be conveying a specific story of their experience. So this is the heart. This is where you're really putting a face, connecting with the personal, wherever the individual staffer or member of Congress is going to have a personal feeling of connection to this issue. So this is where you're sharing your story. Now, there's a couple of things to be thinking about in sharing your story. One is often when folks are planning to go do legislative visits, they get nervous if they've never done this before. Like, oh, I'm supposed to know everything about the legislative process. I don't know this. I'm not an expert. I'm not a politician. I don't know how to do this. Well, what's really important in doing legislative visits, particularly on this issue, is that you are an expert about your own experience. And that is what the legislative staff need to hear. They need to hear, what is the reality of an experience being a grandparent or another relative raising a child? What are the challenges? What are the joys of this experience? And what is most important to help you help the children in your care thrive? You are the expert on that. So you don't need to be an expert in the legislative process. You need to be able to convey your story. So speaking from the heart is really key in this part of telling your story. Speak to that which is really critical and important to you. It's also important to be concise. There may be some staff that have a longer period of time. There may be some that have less period of time. But you want to be able to practice your story and tell it in a way that's only going to take a few minutes. Now, if the staff is looking for more information, they will say, tell me more about this, tell me more about that, and then you can expand on it. But often it's sort of a tight time frame, so you want to do your best to tell your story in a concise way. It's also important that it's okay to share only what is comfortable for you. This is a stranger. We're not expecting you to feel like you must share intimate personal details. If you're comfortable and want to share some pieces, that's fine. But don't feel pressure. Just share what is comfortable for you and what is important to you to share to convey your message. We do urge you to practice in advance what you're going to say and really think, what's the key point that I want to convey? Is the key point that, I really wish I could have had some respite care when I first started, caring for my grandchild, or I really wish that it was clearer to me how I could have gotten health care for her, or where I could have gone for mental health supports for him, or what could have been done to help his or her mother with their substance use issue, or whatever the thing is. Just really think about what is the key message that you want to convey through your story. So those are ways to prepare to share the heart, to share your story. Next, we're going to move to the hands. So remember, head, that framing, key statistic, heart, your story, and hands is hand them something specific. What's a specific support? What's a specific way that you could have been helped or supported? So that's where we get into the GrandRally policy priorities. Now, the GrandRally is not a lobbying event, so we are not pointing to any specific legislation through the GrandRally policy priorities, but we can point to what types of supports and services would really be especially helpful to grand families across the country. So we have pulled together really 4 buckets of priorities. So as the co-sponsors have pulled these together as recommendations for things that you would consider talking about. Now, of course, you are here on your own free will, and you may talk about whatever is most important to you. We pulled together these recommendations because the goal is, if there are many people coming to the Hill with some similar messages, that if multiple offices hear it, you're going to feel more of a groundswell, and we have some united messaging. So that's why we encourage you to consider talking in these 4 buckets. But you, again, are very welcome to talk about whatever is really of most importance to you. So I will talk through these quickly. This first one is really looking at ways that we could do better at keeping families together and supporting grand families that come into contact with the child welfare system. So it's really looking at what could be done in terms of child welfare to better prioritize placing children with relatives when they can't live with their parents, and then to provide relatives the full range of supports and services that they need. So that's making sure that there's services that prevent children from needing to enter foster care in order to get supports and services that they need. So what can we do for those grand families that don't actually enter the child welfare system, that have stepped in advance and have been able to keep children out of foster care? What can we do to provide better supportive services to them? Also, to make sure that for grandparents or other relatives that do need to and want to become licensed foster parents, let's break down barriers for them and make sure that that can happen. And then finally, that continuum of care is available. So if children do enter foster care and then later move to guardianship or adoption, that doesn't mean that the support and service that they got when the children were in foster care is cut off, but there's those post-permanency supports afterwards. So that first bullet is really looking at the child welfare system and how there can be more comprehensive support for grand families that come into contact in some way with the child welfare system. All right, the second bucket is really around the broad range of safety net programs that are out there for families when they hit hard times or are struggling, are low income or struggling financially. So as folks may know, in May, the President is expected to release the second part of his proposed budget. And so this is a lot of the budget that has some major funding support for a number of supportive services for low-income families. So this budget could impact things like Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is formerly food stamps, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is former AFDC welfare, housing assistance, and the Social Services Block Grant, and SSI. So these are all supportive services, particularly for families that are low income or who have had a sudden tragedy and temporarily need some supportive help. Important programs that need to be protected. So that's the second bullet. The third bullet is really one that's looking at what the federal government can do to better ensure that there are services in states that help connect caregivers to other support that's available. So it would be like statewide kinship navigator programs or services that better help grand families, not just in the child welfare system, but in other places. So really encouraging a federal nudge and a federal coordination to help states do that service to grand families statewide in an effective way. And then finally, the fourth is around responding to the special needs of older caregivers. Many folks know that there has been an opportunity for the last 15 years for caregivers to be served by something called the National Family Caregiver Support Program. And that is a program where federal dollars go through to the states that then can serve families through their area agencies on aging. 10% of that program's funds can be used for grand families, but not all states use the full 10%. Some use none of the 10% to support grand families. So it's really elevating the availability of those resources and looking at ways to encourage more states to use those funds to serve grand families. So those are the 4 priorities. Again, there may be something else that's not covered in this that's important to you, and of course, you're very welcome to talk about it. We know that there's a lot of folks that are very interested in making September Kinship Month. If that's something that's a priority to you, you could do that. For folks that might be really concerned about respite care, you could elevate the lifespan respite approach to serving families. So there might be other things that you really know about and want to highlight, and you're very welcome to do that. So that is for the folks that are here and in person. But we know that that is not an option for everybody. And so what we're really thrilled about this year is the opportunity for folks to participate in the Grand Rally via the virtual rally. We really think about there being 3 pieces to the virtual Grand Rally this year. The first is live streaming the rally. For the first time, we will be able to actually have a live stream of the virtual Grand Rally, so folks across the United States will be able to click on a link and watch the rally live as it's happening. We are still working on the specifics of that technology. However, the expectation is that you will be able to go to GrandRally2017.org, and there will be a very clear instruction with a link that you can click on. And when you click on that link, it will put you through to a video live stream of the rally. Our expectation is it will go through the YouTube site for that constant video live stream. There will also be an opportunity to look at snippets of the rally through various co-sponsors or various Grand Rally participants' Facebook streams if they're filming pieces of the rally, but we expect to have a dedicated, professionally filmed live stream of the rally through YouTube. So our hope is that we will get the specifics of that up by the beginning of next week. So check back at the Grand Rally site. If you're registered for the rally, you will also get information about that you can share with your friends back in the state for how to get to that link. But check back to the website. You can also sign up for Generations United's legislative alerts at gu.org, and we will include information in our weekly alert about how to get to that live stream. Next is social media. We are in the process of putting together what we call our social media cheat sheet. So if you're somebody that uses Facebook or Twitter or another social media platform to push out the word about things, we will put together and make available early next week a one-page of sample posts. So it would be something you could post on your Facebook page, something you could post on Twitter, just different examples of things that you can be pushing out around the rally. So some of those will be simply supportive messages about grand families. Some of them will be encouraging people to go and watch the live stream of the Grand Rally with a link to the live stream. Some messages will be encouraging folks to participate in the call-in day. So again, go to the Grand Rally website, and you will early next week get the specific social media messages that we hope that you will spread around and just cut and paste into your social media platform. So that leads us next to the Grand Rally call-in day, and I will turn that over to Adam in a minute, but I just realized I want to point to one other thing. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a note that it says, turn it into a virtual Grand Rally party. If you haven't already gone to the Grand Rally website, we do also include some tips if you want to host a GrandRally virtual party, tips for what you would want to have prepared to do that. We have a sample agenda if you want to make it into an event. So take a look there as GrandRally 2017. Click on the virtual GrandRally button, and there's more information about that. So from here, I will turn it over to Adam to talk about the call-in day.
All right. So on May 9th, 10th, and 11th, there will be a call-in number available on the GrandRally2017.org website. And you can call that number, and you'll follow the prompts. Usually it's like kind of you press like 1 for this, 2 for that, that kind of thing. And then once you're connected to an office, a staff person will answer the phone, and you can use the script that we provided for you on the following slide to help raise your voice and convey your message. And then once you've done that with one, you'd want to do that with your other 2 members. So, and it's, we just found this out. There will actually probably be 2 separate numbers for the House and for the Senate. So that's something to keep in mind, that you'll want to make a note of both of those. So when you're actually talking to the staff person on the phone, you would want to follow the script. I'm not going to read all of it, but you want to introduce yourself, tell them your kind of connection to the issue, whether you were raised by a relative or you're raising a child, or if you're just an advocate. And then you would, tell them to support kinship families, and remind them that children do best with family. Oh, sorry, yes. And of course, you want to mention that you're a constituent. They typically will only record responses from constituents. So it's important that they know you are a constituent. And so, yeah, after you've kind of told them that, to support kinship families and reminded them that children do best with families, you can also tell them that they can learn more about specific policy recommendations at GrandRally2017.org. I will add that you don't, of course, have to follow this script, but even if you kind of go off book a little bit, you want to try to be concise, because they don't, staff people don't typically kind of transcribe what you're saying word for word, so they'll really only get kind of the core intent of your message across, typically.
Adam, I wonder, so Adam used to be a staff assistant in an office, and I wonder if you could convey, or you played that role, right? You took those messages. So just talk a little bit about what's happening on the other end, like you're entering it into a computer, or exactly what's happening.
So in the office I worked in, what happened is folks would call in, and no matter how long they talked for, and some of them talked for quite a long time, we basically would just kind of go into a computer, enter their address, which proves that they're a constituent, right? And then we would kind of put like a note to a more senior staff person that was like, they support, support programs that help kinship families, or oppose programs that, support kinship families. So that's basically all that those upper staff people are going to get most of the time. If you're really persuasive, maybe they might add a little more, or they might somehow personally convey how moving your story was, but you can't necessarily count on that. So that's usually what the upper staff person's going to see. It's just a simple, they support kind of kinship family programs that support kinship families. So, all right.
Great. So I think we are now ready for any questions that we have about either the virtual rally or the in-person visits. So I'm asking Adam to send along any questions we've gotten. Okay, so will the current Facebook controversy with live streaming impact the snippets availability? So I think that I mentioned that we have 2 ways to live stream the rally. So there will be a consistent stream of the entire rally through a YouTube site for those that are actually sitting and watching the entire rally. In addition to that, we expect some co-sponsors and other partners and folks that are there at the rally themselves may live stream snippets of the rally. And so there, in that case, you can go to the GrandRally event page on Facebook and find it there. I don't expect that there will be challenges related to live streaming through Facebook, but I just convey that there is that alternative if that's a struggle for people. How to access the YouTube live stream will be available on the website. Can the social media option allow individuals from the field to address policy issues that are critical to them? So absolutely. So of course the call-in number, as Adam has conveyed, is really a pretty short opportunity to convey your point that will be documented. You can, of course, communicate with legislators in other ways. You can go to their webpage and communicate with them. You can also, if you're a person that tweets, you can actually tweet directly at your legislator, and we do expect to have some options to do that as well. So there's a wide range of ways that you can communicate with your legislator.
And so just to clarify as well, when you're speaking to staff on the phone, you don't have to be as vague as I support kinship families. You know, if you're really passionate about like respite care or something like that, as Jaya said, like you can also mention like I support programs that support kinship families, and I also particularly support respite care, and they'll make a note of that as well. It doesn't have to be really, really broad. But
absolutely. Yeah. Those that are calling from a distance don't actually even have lobbying restrictions.
That too.
But yeah, but that's not something, you know, pointing to specific legislation. That's not something that the GrandRally is endorsing. Mm-hmm. But you have an opportunity to convey the issues that are of importance to you. Do I have to be a U.S. citizen to be considered a constituent? You don't have to be. I mean, certainly I would think that offices are going to listen to people that are in their home district. They're particularly interested in voters, of course. Did you have something else you can offer up to that?
So they don't ask about your immigration. I mean, when I was employed, they didn't ask about folks' immigration status. They will ask for an address. It doesn't necessarily have to be your address, as long as it's within the state or district. We're not advocating that you don't give them a fake address. But
if you are someone that lives in the community that particularly representative serves, you'll need to give them an address that's appropriate. It might be your home address, or it might be a place that you work, for example. But if it's you know, a business or a home situation that is impacted by the location that representative represents, then you should convey that. And as Adam conveyed, typically they wouldn't ask for your status. How far in advance should we request Hill visits with senators and representatives? So we would really encourage folks to be doing that now, and there is time now. We did hold the webinar a month ago, encouraging folks to start doing your scheduling then, but there is certainly time still now. We regularly schedule visits, you know, a week out, 2 days out even, but we encourage you to start as soon as you can. 2 weeks out is actually a great amount of time. Okay. Yes. In addition to that, we had a question about, you know, what if we're not able to come to DC, but we still want to do an in-person visit? So you absolutely, if you're back home, all members of Congress have offices in their districts as well. So you are more than welcome to and encouraged to call to see if you can get a visit with your member of Congress, particularly on the House side. They're going to be back in districts. So you could do it there or with their congressional staff in the district. So absolutely, we would love to see that happen as well, even if you're not coming to Washington. A lot of caregivers are concerned about walking long distances. What is a realistic distance that it will be necessary to ambulate to participate in the GrandRally and legislative visits? Okay, so for those that are coming on buses to the Grand Rally, which is a large number of folks. The buses will be dropping off really very close to the site of the Grand Rally. So they would be looking at, getting really from the sidewalk to the site of the rally, which is probably going to be around 25 to 40, large steps. I would expect, not up and down steps, like walking steps. However, for folks that are planning to go to legislative visits, if walking is really a challenge, folks could go back to the curb and try to hop in a cab. Cabs could be called to get folks to legislative visits, but there might be some waiting time. But it is very challenging to drive, to do pickup and drop off of cars. So that if there's a lot of mobility issues where you need to be doing that to get to legislative visits, I would suggest that you contact us and try to coordinate the best way to make that happen. There is a lot of walking otherwise. If you're not doing hopping back into a cab, it's a long walk. It's probably I don't know, 6 or 7 minute walk at from the Grand Rally site to the closest House office building or Senate office building. Would you say?
Yeah, 2 to 3 blocks at a minimum. Yeah. And then that's when you get into the building. The buildings are quite large.
And they're, distances apart. The other thing that I will say about that is that you can often contact your legislator's office and say, I'm coming to Washington, D.C. I have ambulatory issues. Is it possible that I could secure a wheelchair to get around or some other kind of device? What do you recommend? And that's something that legislative offices can be helpful with. Where do I check in to find out who my contact person is to talk with from New Jersey? Contact person to talk with in D.C. from South Jersey. You want to answer this? I'm not following it.
So I think what this person is asking is they're asking where do I find out who my state contact is for a given state. That's the person that's kind of coordinating travel and other events around the rally in your state, and you can find that on the website. It's under the About tab, and it's just state contact. If you are actually referring to your district congressperson, that is on the next slide, but I'm happy to talk about it now. There's a website called govtrack.us, so that's govtrack.us, and you can just punch in your address on there, and it'll tell you who your 2 senators are, which are the same for everybody in the state, of course, and your district's representative in the House. So,
great. Okay, and then we had a helpful comment coming in from one of our co-sponsor organizations, Foster Club, that says, be sure to remind folks that if you're meeting with the senator from your state, your address doesn't matter, as all residents of a particular state are members of that senator's constituency. So thank you. Of course, if you're meeting with the senator, if you're from that state, that's what's important.
So to clarify that point a little more, the reason that staff in offices, when you're calling in, ask you for your address is because they love the senator likes to be able to respond to comments that come in from their constituents, correct, or senator or House person. So what happens is you'll get a letter in the mail, unless you indicate you don't want one, telling you about the representative or senator's position on that matter. So usually that's why you're getting an address. If you just give them the state, that can sometimes be enough, particularly for a senator. So, yeah.
Right. We did have a clarifying point that there is a lot of walking, and some of the walking, particularly from the rally to the House and Senate office buildings, is actually uphill, unfortunately. With security restrictions, there just is a lot of walking. So do refer to the materials on the website. that talks a little bit more about getting around if you have mobility issues. There's actually a whole website dedicated to that, I believe, that we're linked to in the materials about getting around if you have mobility challenges. So take a look at that at GrandRally2017.org.
Yes, Congress has an office of congressional accessibility whose job it is to help constituents meet their members, right? So please use it as a resource.
Yeah, and that's at
your tax dollars are paying for it.
GrandRally2017.org, planning your trip, I believe is where that information is. Great. Any other questions? Sorry, we're just checking to make sure we got all of the questions. Okay. Okay, one other thing that was highlighted is remember that if you are driving to the rally, there are a few, the best parking option that we would suggest is probably to park at Union Station, which is also where the trains come in. And we will actually have marshals with, I think, balloons and signs that are directing you from Union Station to the site of the rally. So they will help you navigate your way, whether you're parking or coming in on the train from that location. Any other questions? Okay, then we will move to the next slide ahead of time. Oops, one more. Sorry, why don't the representatives have tables in the grassy area since the majority of attendees have mobility issues? Yeah, we have limitations in terms of how many tables we are available to offer. It's a really great point. And so it was just not something that we were able to offer. However, we do share information about the GrandRally with members of Congress and their staff. So staff will be given the opportunity to come down and join us at the GrandRally. So there may be an opportunity to build connections in that way. I would also offer that when you're calling to schedule your meetings with legislative staff, that you would encourage those staff to say, we hope you will come down and join us at the GrandRally. I'm going to be there, and I can't get to your office if that's what you would like to convey. And we would love to have the staff and the members come down and see the program and see what's going on. So we would encourage folks to consider that. In addition to that, for folks that have mobility issues, what we also will be offering is the opportunity to participate in the call-in day part of the rally right there from the West Grassy front. So if you either can't get there because of mobility issues, or a lot of folks I know don't have time because you're coming in and leaving again on a bus, we will have at the Hill Visit table, we have a table specifically dedicated to folks that are doing Hill Visits and have questions. We will also have a spot where you can call your legislative office right there from the site of the rally. So you could be participating in the call-in day from the site of the rally as an alternative way to participate. Are there volunteers who can take caregivers to Hill Visits? We are currently working on recruiting volunteers, and we are starting to get some. We do plan to we will have escorts for a number of groups that are participating in Hill Visits. If you are particularly interested in having an escort, it would be helpful for us to know that when you sign up for the rally. So please let us know that, or email Adam at aotto@gu.org because we are in the process of marrying escorts with groups of Hill Visit participants. Okay.
So this question is, if a lot of people from a state want to go on a visit, should we try to go as a group? And the answer to that is absolutely. We don't want, it's better if a large group of people all go together, because if multiple people try to schedule, then a staff person's afternoon is kind of taken up with like several meetings all about the same thing, right? So.
Yep. That is one of the purposes of having our state contact, is that the state contact is to schedule those Senate meetings. Of course, the House meetings, there may be folks that come from different parts of the state, so they each would be meeting with different House members. But the Senate meeting, our goal is to coordinate the folks that are meeting with each of their senators. That's also the purpose of the Hill Visit table that will be at the site of the rally. Folks can go to that Hill Visit table and get connected with the group that is going on a particular visit. We also have a question here, what is the main event at this rally? So I think we covered that in a little more detail at the previous webinar, but just to be clear, the rally itself is an hour-and-a-half program. Folks are encouraged to gather before the program between 12 and 1, and there'll be an opportunity, there'll be music, there'll be an opportunity to connect with others at the site of the rally. There'll be some various booths and tables of some federal government organizations that have resources that are available in addition to the resources and information from the co-sponsoring organizations. So before the rally, you can gather and get information and connect and network with others. The rally program starts at 1 o'clock with some music. We have a Second Chance Choir from Pittsburgh who has presented at previous rallies and always gets the crowd excited and riled up. And then there will be a series of speaking presentations from caregivers and young people raised in grand families from across the country. The program will be emceed by Michelle Singletary, who is a syndicated columnist for the Washington Post. She does a column called The Color of Money, and Michelle Singletary is, which is a financial column, and she was raised by her grandmother, who she refers to as Big Mama, and really attributes much of her financial wisdom to her experience being raised by her grandmother. So she'll be emceeing the program. We have a musical presentation by musician and songwriter Saul Paul, who will be singing a song that he wrote for his grandmother who raised him, in addition to a couple of other numbers. And then we also are expecting some members of Congress to stop by and offer remarks as well. The program will be made available soon when we have more of it finalized.
So we had a question about what is acceptable attire to wear on a Hill visit. So you want to be comfortable, but you also want to be as professional as you can be while being comfortable. Members understand that, this is a busy day for folks, so they're just happy that you're there to kind of raise your voice in their office, right? So it's not about what you're wearing as much as it is about what you're saying and that you showed up.
That's right. Often large groups like this, and we've seen it certainly in past Grand Rallies, want to all come together wearing a unified T-shirt or something that sort of unifies them as a group. So that's certainly not formal attire, but that's something that offices are used to. So if you want to wear something that shows you unified as a group, of course, if you've registered for the Grand Rally, when you go to registration, you'll be able to pick up your Grand Rally T-shirt. So that would also be fun to include. But if you're more comfortable in more professional attire, that is fine as well. Okay. Yeah, and then I think there was one more question about if you have a really large group that's going to meet with a Senate office, does that mean that not everybody can be heard? So it really is important, as I conveyed in preparing what you're going to say in that meeting. You want to select a couple of folks that are going to be the primary communicators. So you want to make sure that you have that sort of initial presentation where you get your clear point across, but then you also can sort of adapt to the staff person's lead in terms of what they ask. And what I've found often in meetings like this is that if you have a number of caregivers that are participating, it might be that a staff says, let's go around the room and you can just tell us a little bit about where you're from or something like that. So there probably will be some opportunity for folks to at least say, I'm here, I'm from this part of the state, and I've raised my so-and-so. I'm here, and so there'll be some opportunity for folks to share some about themselves. And then there's also an opportunity to do any follow-up communication. So if there's a limited amount of time in the large group visit so that maybe only one or two folks is able to share their individual story, folks can always get the card, the information of the staff person to do some follow-up communication, perhaps then schedule a follow-up visit back in the district or do a follow-up email. Connect with that staff person to find out, if I didn't have an opportunity to share some key issue in the meeting, how can I follow up to make sure that my voice continues to be heard? Any other questions? Okay, we just have 1 or 2 last slides before we are done. Is that me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So finally, we will end with other resources to help you as you're preparing for your visit. Again, we have referenced many times that there's a lot of information at the GrandRally website. Please go ahead and check back. You're going to find helpful resources, particularly at the Advocacy tab for preparing for your legislative visits. We do encourage you to do some research on your legislators before you go into their office. Every senator and representative has their own website that gives you real insight into them, what their priorities are, what committees they serve on. You want to do some research on their website because that's going to help you know where's an issue that I really can connect with this legislator on. You know, if their website in their bio or in their description of what they care about, you know, says something really clearly about, you know, fight for the older citizens of Montana or something like that, then you would kind of come in and say, as a grandparent, I know that you care about issues that are impacting older adults. And, you know, this is maybe not an issue that people think about with older adults, but I am, you know, a grandparent and this is what's happening with me. So you want to really find that point of connection with what is important to them, or let's say that they're fiscally conservative. It might make sense to highlight, I'm a grandparent, and grandparents across the country save taxpayers $4.5 billion each year by keeping kids out of foster care. You want to find that point of connection and see what you can say that will help really tie into something that a legislator cares about. So visit your legislator's website. Another great resource is grandfamilies.org. If you haven't seen that before, it is a resource that talks about what kinds of supports and services and policies are available in your state. So if you're looking for some background information, particularly about your state, that can be a really helpful resource to you. And then finally, Adam referenced earlier, if you're not sure who your members of Congress are, you can go to govtrack.us and type in your zip code or your address, and it will send back to you who your members of Congress are. And finally, if you have questions that were not answered on this webinar, feel free to contact us. Adam's email and my email and the general phone number for Generations United is available here, and we are happy to respond to any questions that you may have. And then finally, I don't think we have any other questions coming in. We just want to say thank you to you all for your interest in this rally. We are really excited. I just did a tally last night, and it looks like we have more than 30 states that are expected to come and be represented at the GrandRally, which is really, really exciting. And we know that that doesn't even cover it because we have so many folks that are planning to participate virtually. So whether you are coming to DC in person or you will be with us virtually back at home or in groups that are celebrating and raising your voices together, we really are thrilled to have you at this event. Thank you for the work that you do every day in providing safe, loving homes to children and helping them thrive. We so appreciate you, and we're really looking forward to celebrating all you do together. And with that, we will end. Thank you.